Good morning, and thank you for tuning in and listening to Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theater here on WCRN AM 830. This is Lisa Conlon, and I am on the phone with Steve Gabriel, Mamma Mia producer. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you, and we so appreciate you taking the time to talk to us from your perspective. You know, the producer of Mamma Mia. Again, iconic show. We've had it at the theater before, and we are looking forward so much to it coming back. Now, how long have you been working with the national tour?
It's going on about 3 years now.
So were you part of the tour that came to the Hanover Theater before, or did that just miss you?
We were. It's interesting, you know, if your audience is interested in hearing about behind the scenes.
Totally.
When you hear the term producer, you think, well, who's the producer of Mamma Mia? And really, Mamma Mia started in London, and they had a producing group there. There were creatives on that side of the pond that really conceived of the show and put it together. And then once it came here to the United States, it's had an amazing run. I think it's in its 12th or 13th year now on Broadway, and almost the same amount of time touring. So with now that we're about over 10 years in, my company called Worklight Productions, we became involved in the show, as I said, about 3 years ago. And we specialize in doing road touring and bringing shows all over North America and internationally. So we came in to help the original producers figure out how to move the show into some smaller venues, and not even smaller, but the first years it goes to, you know, Boston and Chicago and San Francisco and the big markets. And so we came in to help them figure out how to move it into the second-tier markets and third-tier markets.
Well, and a lot of that really has to do with not the size or the capacity of the theater, but how frequently you move the show, right?
Yeah, that's very accurate, absolutely. And that's really where the key is, because, again, when it first went out in the first few years, it would go and sit down for many weeks. Mm-hmm. It could come in and sit for 10, 12 weeks at a time, and that's one way of touring. But now you're finding that many shows will stay 1 week or less. Sometimes it's 3 performances. Sometimes it's even down to 1 performance. We do some markets where we go in, load the show in, do the show, load it out that night, and go to another city.
Right. That's just a crazy schedule. Sometimes I ask the cast members that are touring, how do you keep your energy level? Now, do you tour with the show as well?
No. We have a team. Our office oversees the whole production, and I go out personally about every 4 weeks. But I have a company manager who works for our production company who travels with the company every day.
And that's who I usually have the privilege of working with and talking to them about the marketing settlement. And they really run everything for you when the show's on tour, right?
That's it. They're kind of the boss on the road. They manage everyone's travel, to the dealing with the financial of the theater, to, you know, personnel issues and everything that you get along the way. Because remember, we've got 51 people that move every week and sometimes every day. So it's a big job.
Well, it's a big operation. Now, what were some of the special challenges that you had really changing the production from something that sat down for multiple weeks that could be so easily moved with this next tour?
Well, luckily with this show, the way it was originally designed had to do with what they were going after, which was this beautiful savanna on a big blue sky on the beach. And so the way the physical production is conceived, it's actually fairly small. So it's not like one of the huge shows like a Wicked or something like that has many scenes of scenery. Mm-hmm. This show pretty much has the central walls that create the little the taverna, and then they move around to create different aspects and different looks. So from a physical side, it wasn't hard to rebuild the walls and the drops and the rest of the scenery to be able to move quickly. The challenge actually comes in with the casting. And so you get, particularly since this is a show that has 3 dads and 3 moms, you can't cast a 20-year-old person to look like a father or a mother. And so the challenge is spending a lot of time in casting and finding that person who has a lifestyle that enjoys the travel and being on the road who may be, 45 or 50 years old.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that process. Are you involved with the casting as well?
Yep, we're well along. We're almost finished, actually. We have one more session to do in the first week of July, then I believe we'll have our whole cast. So we have almost everybody except one or two roles cast. And it's been a process of about, I'd say, 8 months. By the time we're done, it'll be pushing a year that it will take to find all the cast members.
Well, it takes time to find the perfect people, right? And that's well worth it.
It sure does. Yeah. Yeah, we went out to Los Angeles. We did a whole round out there as well, and now we're back in New York and doing a few more rounds here. So, yeah, it takes time, but if you take the time, you find the great actors that can do it.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the key things? Obviously, ability and the willingness and the schedule are important, but what are some of those other key things that you're really looking for when you're auditioning your potential cast members?
Well, it's interesting because at this point, most people walk in with the basic abilities. Mm-hmm. They can sing, they can dance, and they have a certain quality of acting to them. So you're kind of starting at a good place from the beginning, people who have the basic skills to do it. And then it becomes chemistry. And so much of our time is spent, we may have the perfect Sky, which is the young guy who's about to get married to Sophie. But then they may not work well with the particular Sophie that you want. So you bring the two in together and you try different pairings to see which have that little bit of spark where then the audience will believe, yeah, these two young people are in love. Mm-hmm. So it's beyond just can they sing or can they dance. It's really how does the whole chemistry of those different relationships work. And then you need to do that with Donna, the mom, and the three dads, Harry, Bill, and Sam. So what's the dynamic? Who do you want, who does the audience think is the father? And the show's written so that you think Sam might be the father. You don't really know, and you never find out, but you think that may be the one. So it's a specific character, and that dynamic with him and Donna has to feel right for it to work well.
We are going to go to a quick break, so stay tuned for more behind the scenes at the Hanover Theater here on WCRN AM 830, and we'll talk to you soon. To more behind the scenes at the Hanover Theater, here we are with Steve Gabriel. I loved seeing this show so much when it came to the Hanover Theater before, and everybody is really looking forward to it returning. What are some of your favorite scenes? And I also just want to say, even though the way you describe the walls and the scenery, it doesn't sound complicated, it has a great effect. And one of the best things about this show is obviously the music and the singing and dancing. And people go crazy for all the ABBA songs, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of your So what are some of your favorites?
I think for me, there's a great moment where Sophie, the young girl, feels like her grand scheme of trying to find her dad is caving in on her, where she invited, as most of your listeners will know who know the show, she invites the people who she thinks might be her father that she found about in Donna's diary to her wedding, thinking that as soon as she sees him, she'll know. Then there's a great scene where it's all falling apart, and she doesn't know. She's met all three. She has no idea. But now each of the fathers think that they're going to walk her down the aisle. So she's kind of painted herself into this corner. And it's a terrific scene because there's so much activity and dance, and she's having this moment of crisis. So that's one of my favorite scenes. And then one of my others is Donna's solo, The Winner Takes It All. It's such a beautiful song.
It really is. It is.
And when we were doing auditions, that's a big part when the Donna walks in. Can she nail that song? Because it's such a cathartic moment in the show.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say those two, and then, of course, you'd have to be dead not to enjoy the end when, the mega mix and the costumes come out. I mean, the ending of the show leave. And this is actually why I think the show has survived for so long, because you enjoy the whole thing throughout, and then at the end you get this great kicker of lights and dance and costumes, and It's kind of irresistible.
It's totally fabulous. I've seen it actually several times. And I did see it in Boston when it came to Boston first, and then obviously I saw it at the Hanover Theater. And I did not notice, from the audience perspective, very much difference between those two productions at all. I really didn't. Are there...
Well,
Go ahead.
The original creatives are very particular about the quality of the show. I mean, some people may think that it's a light show and it's just kind of ABBA and fun and all that, and that's true. It is all those things, but it's also there's a lot of craft behind it, and so if we don't take care and cast it properly and make sure the physical production looks almost identical to what people would have seen in Boston, if we don't do those things, then the show won't have longevity. It'll stop, and so we take a lot of time and put a lot of resources into making sure that if you didn't know it inside out, you'd have a hard time telling the difference between what you see on the road and even what you see on Broadway.
Absolutely. I love that about being able to bring some of these national tours into our theater. Out of curiosity, how many people did you end up auditioning for these select roles? I know you're not done yet, but
I would
in general.
We're in the hundreds and hundreds. I mean, you're talking a cast of 30.
Mm-hmm.
So our total touring company is about 51, but that includes musicians and our crew and our management and all that. But the cast itself is 30 people. And I bet we're over 600 that we've seen.
Wow. That is highly competitive, and as we would expect. Is it more or less competitive for the musicians that you have in the show than the actors? I'm just curious.
I think it's more competitive for the actors. Mm-hmm. It definitely is. I mean, the musicians, you can find very high skilled players, but they all work. Like the people that you want are working a lot. So it's more for us. We want to try to get the best musicians. So it's a little bit harder that way because the really fine musicians are working. Now, it's not to say that there aren't great actors out there who aren't working. The challenge is that it just seems like in terms of supply and demand, there are more people who want to be on stage acting than there are from the musical pool, I would guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes a lot of sense. That's why we should all encourage our children to play an instrument.
If they want to be an actor, make sure they also know how to play an instrument.
That's right, and that they can be the triple threat, now quadruple threat, right?
That's right, yes.
And so, just out of curiosity, what are some of the other productions you've been involved with? Let our audience know about your stellar accomplishments.
Yeah, they may know we did. We're one of the producers of American Idiot, which is the Green Day rock musical.
Oh yes, we had that here at the theater. That was a smashing success.
Yeah, that's right. We played last year, and we've had a great time with that tour, and it really hits a whole new audience. A different type of audience member comes in to see musical theater with that show. So we've been excited about that. We did national tours of Avenue Q and In the Heights.
And we had Avenue Q at the Hanover Theater as well.
Terrific.
Yeah.
And then we this next year we're starting to produce the new touring version of Nice Work If You Can Get It.
That's great.
In 2014-15, and then also we're going to do a new production of the show Chaplin that ran on Broadway this year about Charlie Chaplin's life.
Oh, I didn't get a chance to see that, but that seems like it'll be great.
Yeah, we're very excited about that too. So normally we produce 3 to 4 big musicals a year, and then some other smaller type shows. Like we're working with our producing colleagues from New York on the show called Traces, which is kind of an acrobatic cirque type show, which is really interesting.
Cool.
And that's out this year. So we've a bit of a variety of what we produce. I would say, the meat and potatoes is the musicals, and then we do some other entertainment-based shows too.
Well, and that's really our meat and potatoes too. That's what our audience here in Worcester County absolutely loves. Why don't you just let people know, how did you get into this field?
Well, it's interesting. I went to music school, and I was a trained musician coming out of college. And I got a job at a company called Columbia Artist Management writing program notes. So if your audience member comes in, they open the playbill and they see what is the description of the show and what's going to happen. So that's what I started doing. And then one thing led to another, and I became an agent, and I represented a lot of different touring shows. And after about 2 years of that, I thought, I would like to produce shows. I'd like to get into this business. So I quit my job and started our production company.
That is a great success story. So any advice that you have for other aspiring producers?
I would say, you understand the whole palette. And it's not just the money side. It's not just the logistics of how to build a show. It's the art. It's all of it together. I mean, you need the good producers helps make the sandbox that everybody else plays in. That's really your job.
Absolutely.
You need to be able to listen to your artists and help make constructive comments, and then you have to talk with your investors and make sure that you're on the right track financially.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking with us. It's been so interesting. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that our listeners know about you or the show?
Yes, that they should buy a ticket and make sure they come see it, because it's going to be great.
Absolutely. So go to our website. That's thehanovertheater.org. Again, it's thehanovertheater.org. You can always call our box office at 877-571-SHOW. Check us out on Facebook. We're going to have lots of fun promotions as we get closer and closer, and we look forward to seeing everyone at the theater. So thanks again, Steve, and you have a great day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Mamma mia, does it show again?